Welcome to the Inspire to Invest podcast, where we're sharing stories from real estate investors and how investing has changed their lives. This episode of the Inspire to Invest podcast has been brought to you by Francis 5 Properties and Maynada Media. Welcome to Inspire to Invest. Today, we have an amazing guest with us. We've got Austin James Neill joining us from beautiful BC. And for anyone who is not familiar with him, he is driven with a passion for impact investing and real estate development. He's deeply curious about the world, and he has a desire to actually make a really big difference. With his expertise and experience, he tries to create projects that not only generate profit, but also have a meaningful impact on society and on the environment. So without any further delays, Austin, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Serena. Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be on here.
Pleasure to have you. Now, you haven't obviously been in real estate for that long. What were you doing before you became a real estate investor?
Yeah, so prior to real estate investing, I was, or still am, an aircraft engineer working on helicopters in British Columbia and the Yukon.
Wow.
So that just involved traveling around fixing helicopters. And I also ran a small plant business selling plants out of my house and
Wow.
shipping them across Canada.
Wow, I
Yeah,
didn't actually know that.
yeah,
Cool.
that was fun. It was on Etsy, and it didn't make a ton of money. Sometimes I lost money, but I just like selling plants, and I like growing plants, so
Okay.
it was a lot of fun.
Very interesting. So then how did real estate come into your life in this capacity?
Well, growing up, we actually before I was 14, we moved in over 10 houses, and I was always really curious. I read a lot of books. I was really into personal finance. I'd read over 10 books before getting into the stock market, and then COVID hit, stock market crashed. I started buying, and I quickly realized I couldn't leverage anything in the stock market, and I actually knew real estate pretty well, so I started studying it, and it just kind of transpired from that.
Yeah, nice. So then what was the actual catalyst? Like, was there someone that you spoke to or someone that said like, "Hey, you should consider doing this?" Like, what was kind of that moment where you thought that you could actually turn this into something?
Totally. Well, I was buying a house and I put my first 50 grand down on the house. We actually went over our loan or what we could get pre-approved for. So I had to put extra down. I think it was 40 we needed, and I had to put an extra 10.
Hmm.
And I started thinking about it and I said, well, I just bought the house, signed all the papers, and I was just like, we could literally make more money if we don't live here. And we bought the perfect house, a nice townhouse. It's actually in Whitehorse, Yukon. And we set it all up with furniture. And I said, even before we moved in, I told my girlfriend Megan, I said, we're not going to be here more than 6 months. And she's like, what do you mean? I said, well, look at it like this. It doesn't make sense for us to live here because we'll make more money and we'll be able to grow faster. And the catalyst for me getting into real estate was we were in Whitehorse, Yukon. I had just bought a house. I put 40 grand down, and there was an extra 10%, or sorry, $10,000 I had to put into it.
Hmm.
And it was a large chunk of money at the time. And I realized that the money was going to grow on this house either way with the appreciation. And if I wasn't paying the mortgage, if I had somebody else paying the mortgage, I would be able to live at a lower cost somewhere else and make this property grow for me. So it was
Yeah.
really then, in conjunction with a real estate and private equity course, that just kind of blossomed into full on real estate investing.
Yeah. So then I guess when did you transition full time? I mean, I think there's a lot of real estate investors that will kind of straddle, their employment and then they're investing just so that they've got some job security and cash flow and stuff like that. So what was your experience in respect to that?
Yeah. So it was kind of both. My job as an aircraft engineer, I like to say, is predictably unpredictable in that if the mining industry goes down, you can expect your job to dwindle away pretty quickly. Um, and that's just meaning the work just dries up. The companies don't have any work. The the real estate was going good, and we were buying more properties, and we had bigger projects coming down the pipe. So we have a senior center we're working on, and that required a lot of work. And I was also doing renovations
Hmm.
on a property. So it made sense to work on the renovations to build my own wealth rather than build somebody else's wealth. And in doing so and building my own wealth, I was able to make an impact in my community serving organizations that needed housing. So it was,
Yeah.
for me, it was a very simple transition. You know, we had a bankroll, we had private funds, and we set ourselves up for a timeline. And then we were able to hit that timeline, and from there we were able to take off.
Great.
Yeah.
So based on your experience, obviously you've got a lot of different things that you've done. What would you define as your biggest success, and why was that specifically so important to you?
Yes, great question, Serena. Thank you so much. Biggest success for me personally would be getting a government organization on board, and signing them as a client for my business, specifically medical professionals working at hospitals. And that's the biggest success for me because it really goes back to my roots of working in a medical background, going way back, and serving. These government organizations and hospitals specifically are having a really tough time. The nurses and doctors working at the hospitals are the few and far between now. They're hard to come by, especially in full-time staff. So hospitals are actually closing because of these issues,
Yeah.
and it's actually a chain problem. So they're struggling to find the staff, but they're also struggling to find the housing. So we're now providing the housing. The hospital's closing is incredibly important to me because the medical staff that work there, they need really nice places to live, or they need appropriate places to live, and we're supporting them by giving these houses or providing housing to them, rental housing to them, and that's really important to me. You know, it's if our emergency care staff are understaffed, underhoused, and working their butts off, that's just not a good situation to be in,
Yeah.
as a community and as a city. So it's of our biggest interest to support that and
And
solve these
what
issues.
area do you have those properties in now?
That's in northwestern BC, and we're
Okay.
working to expand that with the organization all across BC.
Okay, great.
Yes.
Awesome. So that definitely is important because obviously people need access to resources and care. Definitely making your impact there, but I'm sure it hasn't been all smooth sailing. So I guess just in terms of some of the lessons that you've learned so far, what do you think are a couple of the biggest lessons? And knowing what you know now, what would you go back and do differently if you had that opportunity?
For sure, for sure. Yeah, biggest lessons. Oh God, I mean, there's so many, and I take them all as blessings, really, and as great opportunities. But we were trying to close on one of the properties, and it I didn't have the money lined up at the same time. You know, people always ask the chicken or the egg, and it's really both. You've got to be working both pipelines. You've got to have some capital available. You've got to be working that. You've got to have like a model of, say, like, hey, we're gonna, to your investors, we're providing this type of investment. Here's
Yeah.
what we're looking at for returns, and you're also looking for properties, building those relationships with agents, brokers, getting everything sorted at the same time.
Yeah.
Because when it came to close, we we had the offer accepted, everything was going good, but the funds weren't in my account. Things were being delayed, so that was really stressful, I would say. And that was a really good lesson to just have the money either beforehand if you can, or be running the pipelines at the same time, and
Yeah.
really have strong relationships there.
Yeah. And I think what's hard about that is it's something that's kind of, maybe out of your control to some respect. So I think as much as you can pre-plan will obviously lessen the blow. But with that being said,
Yeah.
just take a really quick break just to hear a word from our sponsors. Introducing Francis 5 Properties.
Hello, everyone. I hope everyone's doing great. My name is Leo Francis, and this is
Jacqueline Francis.
Together, we are called LJ Francis from Francis 5 Properties. We are real estate investors, business owners, and entrepreneurs. Some of the real estate investing strategies that we're involved in are multifamily value add. We're involved with vacation rentals, and now we're also doing a small development.
So if you'd like to learn more or get involved with any of our projects, please reach out to us. We would love to share what's going on. Our socials are Facebook at LJ Francis, Instagram at Francis5 Properties, LinkedIn at Francis5 Properties, or you can email us at francis5properties@gmail.com. We look forward to hearing from you and helping you scale your business.
Take care for now. Bye.
Thanks again for following along with this episode of Inspired to Invest. In addition to real estate, investing, and running my own brand experience agency for 18 years, I also published a book called The Accidental Entrepreneur in October of 2021. This is my story, and it chronicles how I turned tragedy into triumph to embrace my destiny in entrepreneurship. If you're interested in picking up a copy, you can find the link at serenahomesrealtor.com, and you can also find my link tree with all of the retailers in the details below. Thanks again for your support.
Hi, I'm Alexandra Sidoro. As a social media strategist, brand builder, and business consultant, I help real estate investors grow their reach and build their brand. In today's digital age, having an online presence is critical for the success in the real estate industry. If you're looking to grow and elevate your brand, visit www.mainatamedia.com to book your free discovery call. Let's work together and take your brand to new heights.
And welcome back to the Inspired to Invest podcast. We have Austin James Neill here, and he's talking about how he's using real estate investing to have a positive impact on his community and hopefully the world. So now we talked a little bit about your successes and your lessons. Now, when it comes to obstacles, what do you think is really the biggest obstacle that you've faced so far? And what did you do to kind of push through that?
Yeah. One was finding really good business partners, and something I've now found is it is incredibly hard to find really good business partners that suit you and that have the opposite skills that you need to compensate for. So it was a lot of studying on what really a good business partner looks like. Looking at good dynamics, following other people. Going to talk with them, getting each side. We don't want to leave ourselves astray or run ourselves down the wrong course by not doing the research, not planning, and not really figuring that out. So that was one of the biggest obstacles I faced so far. Now I have a really good business partner who runs his own construction business, and again, I'm in real estate and private equity and development. He's a builder, so he knows all of that stuff. So again, it's really complementary to what we're doing. But it's huge, not having a business partner and not having somebody like that on your team. You're taking on more risk and a ton of other things. So I would just say, doing the research, putting in the effort to make that happen.
Yeah, and I think it's important to note that when you go into a partnership with someone, I think you need to expect that there's always a chance that may not last forever. So it's always good to kind of talk about what the ending could look like and what those expectations are at the outset. And that was a learning that I had with my business that, I was issued shares in the company, but we never even had a partnership agreement. So when my partner decided to exit 4 years in, we were on good terms, but she had some personal things that happened in her life and she wanted to exit the business. And then we had to go through that process of valuing it, coming in the middle with her expectations and what I could pay for and things like that. So I think that it's always wise to try to, set the tone for what that could look like, just so it makes for an easier transition if something unforeseen happens. And
100%.
Hopefully you'll be on good terms, but it doesn't necessarily always mean that you will be. So I think it's really important to make sure you've got, that stuff laid out from the very beginning.
Yeah. And having those hard conversations and continuing to have them, okay, this isn't working, we gotta change something before it happens or, before it gets worse. And also knowing, it could not work out, right? Going into it, hoping for the best and planning everything, but it's still not a guarantee.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I guess when it comes to advice, I know that you're big on educating yourself in this space the way that I am. What do you think is the best advice that you've been given, and how have you kind of put that into practice?
Yeah, so some of the best advice I've been given or I've come across is I see a lot of people doing business to client or business to small business. And for me, what's really propelled me forward is going is changing the model a bit and going business to business. So selling to businesses, corporations, governments.
Yeah.
And it's given me, it's a different clientele and it's a different model, and it's
Yeah.
not always for everybody. You know, if you're really big on clients and serving the public, you know, this might not be the model for you. But something I found is it's a huge market, and I found the ceiling on it is very large. You know, working for government organizations and large corporations, it can be really rewarding. In that you get to, maybe your serving isn't on, you know, directly on the client you're working with, but it's on a broader kind of spectrum. So
Yeah.
you don't necessarily get to see everybody you help, but you're able to have a much bigger impact through
Yeah.
that. And that was one of the lessons I learned was, yeah, just switch that model, switch the thinking. Who is the end user that's going to use this product? And you can go from one person to an organization, to a government, to a country.
Yeah.
And those are just some ideas that you can play with and think about and find a problem and solve it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's really smart. Now, I guess what would you say is next for you with your plans? And there was a question that came up recently with a meeting I was part of, where the question also came up, what is your freedom number? So if you were to define, you know, your pinnacle, whether that's a certain number of doors or a certain number in terms of revenue, what would that look like for you?
Yeah. So first question, what's next for me? Well, right now we're working on large commercial developments where it's public, private, and government. So we're building a 250 unit senior center, and it's roughly a $350 million development.
Yeah.
We're actually building a city park for the city, which we're going to donate back to them, and a conference center. So that's really exciting, and we've got more of those planned, along with master plan communities and other things.
A question about the senior center. I don't know if this is different in BC, but here in Ontario, one thing that I was really surprised by when I got my real estate license is that there's actually no rent control with long-term care for seniors facilities. And you would think, of all the people in the population, you know, the seniors are vulnerable in the sense that they probably are on fixed incomes. Clearly, they're not working anymore. So I was very surprised to see that didn't apply to them. You know, there's a lot of rent controls for like other parts of the population of regular tenants. So I'm just curious if that's different in BC compared to here in Ontario.
I don't believe there is rent control for senior centers. Like down in North Vancouver and in Vancouver, you can pay up to like 25 grand a month for like a high-end seniors residence.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Now there is programs to get into a senior center if you are a senior, with BC Housing and things like that. So if you're, you know, below a certain income, you can apply for this and still get into our senior centers because it is a private senior center. But yeah, so that's a really big one for us. My partners in Vancouver, they've done 16 of these in the last 5 years. So I'm now on board with them, planning and doing the development side. So that's really, really exciting. Again, you know, serving a ton of people in this huge market is something I wake up in early for and go to bed late for all the time, just because I'm so excited about it. And then your second question
was your freedom number.
Is my freedom number. Yes, that is such a great question. And to all those to you guys out there, I define it early. Commit yourself to doing the work to getting that freedom number. And I'm sure you've explained it before what the freedom number is, but I'll just run through it quickly. Is that number that you can have everything you want, you can have the life you want. It's also, I've heard it called Lifestyle Freedom Day, which is another great one where you're free, you're financially set up. And that number for me right now is 25,000 a month net income to myself. Now I do split my profits in my business with my business partner, so that's 50,000 net to the business. And that has me outside a lot, having fun and going to events. And I honestly think, you know, working more isn't making more. I think we need to work less and make more, because we're able to meet more people, we're able to go out more. So that's really my freedom number, and that actually happens December 17th, 2025.
Nice.
That's
I
when
like that
that's set
you're
to
like
take
literally you
place.
pinpointed it.
That's my 30th birthday,
Nice.
and it's not a day past.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I found for me, real estate investing wasn't completely on my radar, but when I was trying to buy my first house, the way that I kind of looked at it was like Freedom 35. So you always see
Yeah,
the commercials like Freedom 55. I'm like, well, that's
yeah,
still like a good stretch away. It doesn't mean you can't enjoy your life then, obviously, but like I don't want to be working that hard up until 55. So
yeah.
for me, I define that as I wanted to be mortgage free by the time I was 35. And I pretty much missed it by like 4 months. Just
That's great.
I actually had the money, but I was
Yeah.
waiting. It was in US dollars. And I had sold my first rental property in the States. And when we sold it, the dollar was, let's say, like $1.37 to one. And 2 weeks later, when we closed, it dropped to like $1.24. And I was like,
Oh
well,
no.
I'm going to lose like $25,000 if I exchange this now. So I just kept it in the bank account for like 9 months or something like that, waiting for it to swing the other way. So I think we exchanged around $1.31 or 32. And then I pretty much paid off my mortgage at the beginning of 2018, January 2018. So it's
That's
just
amazing.
technically, I guess I could say, but like when it was done. And then it was kind of like once you're there, it's like, okay, well, what next? Like you still need money to live
Yeah.
and everything, right? But
Yeah.
that was really like that was my big freedom number.
That's amazing. I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. And yeah, I think people get mixed up in thinking that's all working. A lot of setting that is thinking. So you're not just thinking about it once. You're thinking about it constantly, day
Yeah,
after day. You're building it. It's a balloon that continues to grow.
of course.
And not so much in the essence of a balloon, because people think balloons are fragile and they can pop. But
Yeah, and
yeah,
obviously what
it's
that looks like at one point in time is one thing, and now it's more like, I have enough money to live off of, but how can I start creating that generational wealth to take care of my daughter down the road and maybe the children that she may have down the road? And obviously it's going to evolve throughout your journey, but I think that's the beauty of investing, that you can think forward. It's not just like you get that paycheck every 2 weeks and it could always be gone in a moment's notice. So I think that's the most important thing to consider when you start investing in yourself and you start investing in your future.
100%, 100%. Yeah. The best investment I've made is always in myself. And whether I put that money on a credit card and bought a course, or went to a seminar or did whatever, but
Yeah.
it's always paid tremendous returns.
Yeah, no, agreed. Now, if you could go back to the beginning when you first started investing, is there anything that you would tell your former self based on the things that you know now?
That's a really good question. Tell my former self. I would say have more fun. There was a lot of I battle with this all the time, and it's like, well, should I just be working, all day and not being have any fun, like the hustle mentality
Yeah,
and everything. And I'm on board with that to the most extent. But I mean, you get two lives, and the first one is when you realize you only have one life, and then you get to live that one life. And the second one's when you realize you only have one. So now I'm time blocking. I wasn't doing that before, so time blocking is absolutely incredible. For those of you guys who don't know, you'll get a lot more done in less time, and you'll be able to slot that free time for whatever you like to do,
yeah,
whatever you do in your free time. So I would say time blocking and just really enjoying the journey, because there
yeah,
was times I actually got sick from overworking and stressing too much. So I would
yeah,
just say, yeah, time block and really enjoy the journey.
yeah, yeah. No, I think that's important. I remember I was taking a mentorship exchange back in 2014. And I remember we are all kind of sitting around, all of us mentees and stuff like that. And we're all talking about like what we were excited about and happy with. And I was like, I'll literally be taking the most holidays I'd ever taken, which at that time was a month. And
Yeah,
the challenge when you're a business owner, an investor, whatever it may be, is that getting away from your business can be really tough. And for us, I would take a week one year, nothing the next year, maybe 2 weeks, but like it was all over the place. And a big challenge was honestly payroll at that time. I was like, well, who's going to sign the paychecks? Like I
yeah,
didn't have it set up at that point in time. But when we hired a bookkeeper to go direct deposit, I could literally just hit a button and transfer the money. So it didn't matter where I was. So that literally was so freeing. And it didn't mean that I didn't like, I would feel like I was always accessible on holidays and stuff like that. But that was, my little milestone that I kind of felt like I was, starting to move forward and starting to achieve a certain level that I wanted to see in my business.
Yeah, that freedom is really everything. Once that button comes around, yeah, I mean it's huge.
So in terms of quotes, I always find them super motivating and inspiring for me. What's one of your favorites?
Yeah, so my favorite quote is by Albert Einstein, and I absolutely love it just because I feel like it describes me so well. People always say, like Austin, you do so much, and there's so much around you, and there's so much going on. Like why and what for? And when I saw this, it totally clicked because it's me. And he says, "I have no special talent. I am only passionately curious." And I think it couldn't be more true.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. So for anyone that is out there that wants to get in touch and to learn more about what you're doing or maybe get involved, how can they find you?
Yeah, great question. You can find me on Facebook at Austin James Neill. You can email me at info@eliasrangecapital.ca. And yeah, you can find me in Squamish, BC.
Great. Awesome. So we'll include that in the details below. And for anyone out there that has enjoyed what they've seen, make sure that you subscribe to this YouTube channel. And you can also follow along at Inspire to Invest podcast. So thanks again for tuning in. And of course, Austin, thank you for your time today.
Thank you so much, Serena. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you again to our sponsors, Francis 5 Properties and Maynada Media, for bringing you this episode of Inspire to Invest. The views represented on this podcast are for general information only and does not constitute investment or other professional advice or an offering of securities. The host and guests featured on Inspire to Invest make no representations as to the performance of any particular investment. Should you decide to make an investment, you are responsible for conducting your own review and analysis. It is recommended that you obtain independent legal, accounting, and tax advice from licensed professionals.